round of applause and let's start.
Thank you. So usually the presentations I have last about an hour or 75 minutes. So yesterday I was thinking, what can I say in 30 minutes? And I was trying to change the presentations I already had, and I realized I can't change it because I feel everything I'm saying is so important that I cannot delete any slide. And I had to change everything. So I was thinking, what is the most frustrating part of my job? And I am a CEO of Crowdfund Productions. It's a local consulting company that helps entrepreneurs raise money for their projects. And we've been involved in almost probably already more than 80 campaigns on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and other platforms. So the most frustrating part is when people call me and all they know about crowdfunding is what they read in newspapers. And of course, newspapers are talking about success stories. And everybody knows about projects that raised millions of dollars. So people call me and they say, hey, I have this great project, I want to raise $1 million. And I tell them, well, I don't think so. So actually, these projects that raise more than $1 million, they are 0.002% of all campaigns. The majority of campaigns fail. And we need to understand why they fail. And what can you do differently to change it? The current success rate on Kickstarter is below 44%. For many categories, it's significantly lower. For example, for websites and apps, it's below 20%. Why is that? The reason is because most of the campaigns actually failed even before they go live on Kickstarter. And they failed because of the lack of preparation. They don't do their homework before going on Kickstarter or other platforms and expect strangers to fund their projects. It is not going to happen. So how long would it take you to prepare your project for Kickstarter? From my experience, for the majority of campaigns, it is between 6 weeks and 6 months. Pebble, which is now the second most successful project on Kickstarter, they said that they were working on their project for almost 2 years. So don't expect that you just created a project and now you are ready to go on Kickstarter. What it depends on? It depends on your funding goal. So the more money you want to raise, the longer it's going to take you to prepare your project. The current size of your social network. For example, I was talking yesterday with a guy who said he wants to raise $100,000 and he just opened his Facebook page and he has 2 likes. So I don't think it's going to happen, at least not now. Your current expertise. What can you do yourself? What you need help with? And how much time do you have? So time and money. Some people are saying that they spend 10 hours a day, every day, working on their campaigns. So do you have this time? If you don't have this time, you need to hire someone to do it for you. If you are not familiar with social media, so you need to learn about it or you need again to hire someone. For example, right now I have a client, I think I spent more time with her, teaching her about different social networks than working on her Kickstarter campaign. And the first question you want to ask yourself, why do you want to crowdfund? The most obvious answer is, I need money. Actually, this is not the reason why people go on Kickstarter. At least the majority of the people have different objectives. For many companies, this is a part of their marketing plan, and they really include it in their marketing plan. So how much money they raise is not as important as how much publicity they get out of it. And it's actually very important because depending on that, you can make a plan for your campaign, how much money you want to spend on your campaign. Because if you want to raise money, you don't want to spend more than you're raising. And if you are doing it as a marketing, you can afford spending more than raising on the campaign. Beta testing and crowdsourcing. You have a product and you want to understand if this is something that people would want to buy, especially if it is an expensive product. For example, I had a client in August. Her campaign failed. The reason for that, she raised 35,000 out of 50,000 she was trying to. The reason for that, after 10 days, she decided to stop the promotion because she found out that the product she had, actually, she needed to change it. She had her own pricing and she had her own packaging. So before going on market, she actually had to change so many things that it didn't make sense for her to spend more money on promotion of the product that is not going to be sold. Pre-sales and customer engagement, it's obviously, for example, if you have a product and it's not ready for mass manufacturing, but you believe that people would like it, you can finance it through pre-sales on Kickstarter and other websites. And market validation for the next funding round. This is more and more normal for projects on Kickstarter. Many VCs and angel investors are telling startups who are coming to them, well, if you believe that it's going to be sold, show us that you have a market demand. Go on Kickstarter and show us how many backers are you going to have, how many people will buy it. So before you go on Kickstarter, you really need to answer these questions, why you want to do it. Most people know only about Kickstarter, but actually Kickstarter is less than 10% of crowdfunding. The vast majority of money in crowdfunding are in debt crowdfunding, P2P lending or P2B lending. And there are 4 types of crowdfunding, and you need to decide which one you want to use. For most businesses, if you need money reasonably soon, Kickstarter type crowdfunding is not actually good because it's going to take time. For that crowdfunding, for example, for P2P lending, you can have money within 3 days, but it's up to $35,000. And for P2B lending, you can have up to $500,000. And it takes about 2 weeks, which is much faster than Kickstarter. So we had on our website, crowdfundproductions.com, we have several very useful infographics and presentations, which I recommend you to take a look at. This is, for example, we will be discussing how business should decide which type of crowdfunding to use depending on time, the amount of money to raise, stage of the business. So if you decide you want to go on Kickstarter, you need to answer the questions, is it a good match for crowdfunding? Is it something that many people would want to buy, or you're going to have, for example, if you have B2B business, it's not a good match because you're not going to have enough bakers. Is it reasonably affordable? And interestingly enough, this is now less important than it was, say, a year ago. I would say that the best price for Kickstarter type projects are between $25 and $50, because $25 is the most popular perk. But at the same time, we've seen many projects that offer product for $200, $300, and they were very successful. And you have to understand that the lower the price of your product, the more difficult it is going to be for you to raise more money because you need more people to pledge on it. How easy it is to understand the value. If it is very difficult for you to explain it to your mom or your neighbor what it is, probably it's not a good idea to go on Kickstarter. They may think that they don't need it, but at least they would understand what it is. can you create strong emotions, connections, and build a community around it? So for planning, you need to see what exactly you want to put on Kickstarter. If you have several projects, which one would be the best match? If you have a product, you need to think if you may want to run several campaigns. When you want to do it. It depends on seasons. And for example, if you looked at the most successful Kickstarter campaign, the Coolest Cooler, I actually was involved in the research of the reasons why the first campaign failed. And one of the main reasons was the timing, because they decided to run it during Christmas time, which was a really bad decision. Because people are more interested in buying something that they are going to give as a gift tomorrow, not something that they are going to receive 6 months from now. When during a month would be the best time to start a campaign? Obviously, sometime close to when people get paid. When in a wiki you want to start it. So all of these questions you really need to have an understanding before you go online. How much time do you need to prepare the project and how long you want to run the campaign? For example, this summer I've seen many campaigns run significantly longer than usually. About 90% of the campaigns on Kickstarter run for 30 days. But this summer, I've seen many campaigns that were for 45 days, 50 days, and they were very successful. And some people believe that this is because of the summertime, because internet traffic to Kickstarter is significantly lower, so you need more time to raise money. Who's your target group or target groups? And you really need to understand it. If you say it's men 25 to 45, it's not a target group. You need to really segment them in, so you could see them and you could understand their lifestyle and what they want. Because just because you love your product doesn't mean that everybody else is going to like it. Their geography, their lifestyle. And when you understand that, you can decide on the marketing channels how to reach them and how to find influencers for your campaign.
Mm-hmm. Are you open to questions, or you want us to hold questions till the end?
Well, let's, yeah, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to finish everything. But you can just write down. So choosing the platform, I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but from what I've heard here, actually most of the people who introduce themselves, for them Kickstarter wouldn't be a good match. And in some cases you need to decide which platform you want to use, or if you even want to use any platform, because right now there are more than 50 options for people who want to run their own crowdfunding campaign. On our website, we have the whole presentation about it, so I'm not going to talk much about it, but you can go to our website and check it out. And we have a list of different crowdfunding platforms and plugins for WordPress if you want to run it on your own website, or platforms if you want to run your own platform. For example, for universities or business incubators, they can organize their own platform to run the crowdfunding projects. So for you, it depends on your product niche, because not all projects would be a good match for Kickstarter. Your funding goal, I would say that if your funding goal is high, Kickstarter probably is the best option. But if you have a small funding goal, you can go to more specific niche platforms. And your expertise, how much help do you need running your platform? Because Kickstarter has a really bad customer service. And I've seen campaigns that were canceled without any explanation. I've seen a campaign which was successful and they didn't get their money. And 3 months after the end of the campaign, they received a message from Amazon that all the payments were canceled. And Kickstarter doesn't care to explain. So they have, in Best Business Bureau, they have F category. So if you want really help from the platform, you probably need to look for something else. And for example, even I almost always recommend Kickstarter. I had an experience working with Indiegogo this summer, and we received huge help from them, including, like I spoke with the director of Indiegogo for 5 hours. And they introduced us to potential partners, to journalists, to all kinds of things that Kickstarter obviously is not going to do. So as I said, you're welcome to check out the presentation on our website. It's called Kickstarter and its alternatives. So top mistakes, why the campaigns are not successful. Not doing your homework. If you have and it is one of the services that our company provides, if you have an idea for the project, you need to see if there are any other projects that were successful. And if there are no projects similar to yours, probably you need to think if you're going to be successful. If there are projects, you need to research them, and you need to understand that, for example, you see a successful project, but it doesn't mean that it looked exactly like this at the beginning of the campaign. Because the creator can edit the Kickstarter page during the campaign. So what you see is not what it was from the beginning. I would really suggest reading the comments. It is very helpful to understand what was wrong, what worked and what didn't. Many campaigns, you can research which media covered the campaign, so you can contact the journalist or the media for that. Look at the price model, at the perks, which perks were most popular, which people didn't care for. Not building your crowd in advance. It is really, I feel really sorry for people who put their campaign on Kickstarter and wait that someone is going to pledge. Because the first thing is you need to have your own crowd to support you. And if you have your own crowd, and if you have a very strong start, then the crowdfunding campaign itself will support you. And when I say building the crowd, I've seen it many times. People believe, okay, I'm going to go on Fiverr and I'm going to buy fake Twitter followers or fake Facebook fans. So it doesn't count. It's not building the crowd. You need to build the crowd of people who are really interested in your project and who would be interested in buying your product and who would be enthusiastic to share your project with everybody around them. Not preparing your media outreach before the campaign and spamming your network or journalists during the campaign. You need to have a list of journalists and media you want to contact, and you want to contact it as soon as possible. I wouldn't suggest to contact them well in advance about the campaign, but usually what we do, we contact media. It depends. For the bloggers, it makes sense to contact them in advance because they're usually very slow. But for daily media, it makes sense to contact them a day or two in advance before the campaign. And if they didn't respond, just don't try to sell them 1,000 messages. Or don't try to pretend that you know them well if you don't. I had an ex-client who decided that he wasn't happy with media coverage, so he found the Twitter accounts of the journalists and he started sending them messages. I'm such a big fan, I love you, and you're the best journalist. So one of the journalists from TechCrunch said, okay, you love me, tell me why. And this guy just started writing, oh, you're absolutely the best, blah, 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 blah. And he didn't say anything concrete. So it was obviously that that journalist was just laughing and said, you know, and he just blocked his account. Not having 3 plans. Most people have 2 plans, if I succeed or if I don't succeed. Some people don't even have a plan for not succeeding. So, but there is another option if going to have a huge success, and it might be a problem. Because it has been more than 5 cases I know about when people ended up going bankrupt after extremely successful campaigns. And the more money you raised, I mean, let's say you want to raise $10,000, if you raise 100,000, it is 10 times more problems for you. And according to the research, almost all campaigns that are very successful, they either have huge delays with delivery or do not deliver at all. Not making a budget and sticking to it. I'm going to talk about that later. But you need to decide, as I said before, if your campaign is about raising money or about promotion of your business. So if you're promoting your business, it's okay to spend lots of money on promoting your campaign. But if money is the main reason for you to go on Kickstarter, make sure that you spend less than you raise. And not getting feedback for your perks in advance. I've seen many people who went on Kickstarter and the first day they got so many critiques for their product that it didn't make sense for them to continue the campaign. So it makes sense for you to have your page as, for example, a preview page on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or other platforms, or you can go on Prefundy and create a project there, and you can ask your friends or people through social media to comment on that. So about perks. Many people do not realize that small perks are very important. And it is not about money. Actually, Kickstarter had very interesting article in their blog about it, the value of $1. And it is not about money. It is about growing your crowd. The people who are going to promote you, people who are going to share your campaign. Because most of the people who are pledging $1, they are not going to get anything. They are pledging just because they want to show their support to you. And very often they are the most enthusiastic people. And for example, some of the most successful campaigns, they had 5, 6, 7,000 of people who pledged $1. Most popular perk, as I said already, it is $25. But again, it depends on the product. If you have a product that is significantly more expensive, it is going to be your most popular perk. But people are most comfortable pledging $25. And I can tell you that campaigns that have perks for $25 or less, they have a probability 80% more to be successful. The perks depend on your target group, so how much they can afford. If you have something for teenagers, don't expect them to pay $100 for that. And their lifestyle, also the geography. If you have a heavy product, there is no reason for you to try to promote it in Australia or New Zealand or somewhere where you will end up paying for shipping more than the cost of the product. And you need to pay attention to the taxes. So, speaking of that, the budget. An average successful project on Kickstarter actually is raising about between $7,000 and $8,000. So when people hear about campaigns raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, they don't realize that more than 80% of campaigns raise below $10,000. And depending on category, some categories have about 90% of the campaigns that are raising around $5,000 or $6,000. You need to decide on how much is absolutely minimum you need. And if you can split the campaign, your project in stages. Because you can, for example, for games, you can have one campaign for one game, and you can have another campaign for a new game or for any upgrades. How much you can realistically raise. When people are saying, I want to raise $100,000, I'm asking them, do you already have at least 30,000? Because this is a kind of a rule of crowdfunding. You need to have promises from your own network that they will be able to pledge and will be willing to pledge during first 3 days 30% of your funding goal. So really try to, when people are saying, I have no idea how much I can raise, so probably it's not a good idea to put $100,000 as a funding goal. Also, it will affect your Kickstarter, your results in Kickstarter search. Because Kickstarter has its algorithms that are putting you higher in the search. Right now, Kickstarter has more than, I believe, 6,000 projects, live projects on the website. So you need to think about it as a Google search. If you are not on the first page, nobody is going to find you unless you just send a direct link. How can you get closer to the first page? You need to have, the most important part is the number of backers you have. The second most important is the percent of your funding goal you've raised. And after that, the amount of money you raised. So if you have a funding goal of $10,000 and you raised $5,000 the first day, it is 50% and it's really good. But if you have a funding goal of $100,000 and you raise the same $5,000, it's really bad. So the same amount of money, but in Kickstarter search, you're going to be in completely different places. And it is going to affect the results of your campaign. So how much you need to raise, and there are also some unavoidable costs in case you're going to succeed. And we also offer, in our company, we offer like a list of the costs that every campaign has. Usually people do not realize how much they are going to spend on shipping and packaging. So if you have physical goods, you really need to think about it, and you need to plan in advance. Because I was just talking last week with a guy who was very successful, and he ended up realizing that he cannot send it. And he manufactured his product, so he has a product, and he cannot send it because he doesn't have money to ship it. Kickstarter, basic information. So founded in 2009, available for residents of 5 countries. You can create a project in 15 categories, all or nothing funding, which is like for most other platforms, they offer take whatever you raised. Here, if you don't raise 100% of your goal, you are getting nothing. Right now it has almost 7 million backers, and 80 projects raise more than $1 million. The most successful project, as you probably heard recently, it's Coolest Cooler, which raised more than $13 million, which is actually one of the cases when it was completely against all the rules, because it was very expensive product and it was very heavy product. And still. So they have approval process which became a little bit strange recently, because nobody knows really why they approve a project and why they don't. I've seen projects that absolutely shouldn't be approved based on the rules, but still. So projects only, if you don't have a date when it's going to be done, you cannot fund it on Kickstarter. There are lots of prohibited uses. You really need to read the whole list. You can see the fees. You must have rewards there. So for example, on Indiegogo, 30% of the money raised were raised altruistically. People didn't have any rewards. Donations can be done between $1,000 and $10,000. And if project succeeds, in most cases, you're going to get the money in 2 or 3 weeks after the end of the project. Again, we have another infographics on our website, so you can see all the data by categories, which I think is useful. So, live campaign. You can see the most common mistakes. Video. You really, right now people are saying that you have only 8 seconds to catch someone's attention. So if you have a long video, if you are trying to show your product like a minute in the video or later, most people are not going to see it because they're going to just go somewhere else. Description, too long, not enough visuals, doesn't create trust. You really need to show people the timeline and that you've done something and that you understand the budget. When you talk about yourself, it's cool that you like the project, but it doesn't mean that I want to pay my money for that. So explain to me how I'm going to benefit from it. If you don't have stretch goals are used usually when you reach your goal and you want your bakers to continue spreading the word so that you could raise more. So you need to think about it in advance, what you can offer them. Lack of updates and communications with bakers. Many bakers are, not many, but a significant number of bakers cancel their pledges because they feel lack of attention from the creator. No plan for keeping a momentum and spamming, as I said already. So what you need to say, you can just read it. Common mistakes. Campaigns are not going according to your plan, so you really need to monitor and see what is working or what is not. And if you check how you get your traffic on your Kickstarter page, so you need to work on that. If you have lots of traffic and low conversion rate, you need to change your presentation. If you have a high conversion rate but low traffic, you need to work on promoting the campaign more. For example, I had one campaign recently that had an average 500 people visiting the campaign page and only 1% conversion rate. So it was obviously that we didn't need to spend more money on promotion, we needed to work on the presentation to convince people to buy it. Outsourcing. When people just want to say, okay, I don't have time for that, I just want somebody else to run it. No, because Kickstarter is so much more than money. You learn so much from your potential customers that you really need to be involved in that. And not understanding the campaign dynamics. When usually you see the normal graphic for most successful campaigns. When you have a very active first 3 days, then you have a significant dip in the middle, and then you have more successful last 3 days. Money raised, depending on how much money you raise, it also depends on how much you are going to raise from your own network and how much are you going to raise from strangers. For most campaigns, small campaigns, most of the money comes from their own network. So on the last part, post-campaign, it's very interesting that even for many successful campaigns, I cannot say that this is a success story. Because for Kickstarter, it's a little bit better, but we did a research on more than 500 campaigns on Indiegogo, and the delivery rate is only 28%. So most of the successful campaigns that raise money, they fail to deliver a product. So you need to think about that if you think about being successful. So your campaign was successful, and what's next? You can think about it as a single project and decide you're not going to do anything else. You can get so excited that you want to run another campaign for the same product or for the upgrade. You can create a business out of the project. And you can use the campaign as the first step to approach investors, which we've seen recently for many campaigns. And this is my contact information if anybody has any questions.
All right, let's give Elena a big round of applause. Let's give a big round of applause to Ali Nicholas here.
Hi. So I'm going to have to keep this a little bit brief. I have to run out and shoot TEDx after this, so forgive me if I'm a little bit rushed. So really quick about who I am. I'm someone who really loves challenges, which makes Kickstarter a really good place for me to be. It is an enormous challenge. So the Kickstarter that I just finished up in July was my first. We raised $26,935 in 30 days. And it was a fight all the way there. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Probably the second hardest thing, the first thing being what inspired this film, actually. So our goal was $25,000, and most of our funds came from the Boulder community and Colorado community. I kind of thought we might be able to reach beyond that, but ultimately it was my network that made that happen. So speaking of community, quick backstory just to put my project into context. These are the mudslingers. I'm sure most of you guys noticed that Colorado flooded last year. And when it did, we started a flood relief organization mostly on accident. That's like me down in the right. This is one of our first days as a group. The woman in the front had 3 feet of mud in her house. They were librarians who never threw anything away. Their house was crazy. So we showed up and kind of mobbed her house and 10 other houses that day in Boulder. When the flood happened, I saw all these people posting about how they wanted to help, and I knew a lot of people needed help, and there didn't seem to be a platform to connect those. Like all the major volunteer organizations just wanted money at that point and weren't ready to send volunteers out because it was a dangerous situation in many ways. And so I, not being a software developer, didn't know what to do, so I started a Facebook page, and I didn't really think that it would work. And it did. Within a week, we were on the nightly news, a ton of other channels around here. Ended up being on the Today Show because of that, which was kind of crazy. And within 3 or 4 days of starting this Facebook page, we were running a full-on disaster response organization with no experience in that whatsoever. None of us had no idea what we were doing. We took over my office. We had, I think, around 1,500 volunteers contribute somewhere between 15 and 20,000 volunteer hours. To put that into a monetary amount, that's somewhere close to $500,000. If you'd paid all those people what FEMA recommends. So we made a really huge impact in our community. So similar to my Kickstarter campaign, I didn't really sleep a lot during that time period. We ended up helping over 350 homes in Boulder County. It was the most transformative experience of my life. It made me realize that I could have an impact in the world, which is something I don't think I really got before that. It blew my mind to watch the way the community showed up for each other. I don't think I really knew what community was before that, and I'd never seen that. People give that much, and it really inspired me, obviously, enough that I made a film about it, or I'm making a film, I should say. We're in production right now. So I shot a lot during the film, or during the flood, and I didn't really have any intention of making a film about it, but being a documentary filmmaker, it's kind of like an itch, this need to document things. And I had all this footage, and then in December, I started thinking about doing a Kickstarter campaign to keep that, community flow going. And it took me a while to actually get to the point where I was able to do that. I kind of had some PTSD, was really exhausted, needed a few months. And then late winter, I should say, we started working on the Kickstarter campaign. We put about 4 months of work into it beforehand. I kind of wish we'd put twice that much work into it, honestly. A lot of things I assumed would happen didn't happen. The community, I thought everyone would just jump on board right away, but it had been a while since the flood. If I had done this in November, we would have raised 5 times that amount because everyone was so emotionally connected. But I lost that opportunity, and as a result, I had to remind people of the emotional connection, and it just wasn't as strong as I thought it would be. So that's one thing, is don't assume anything. I had some diehard people, but it took a lot of work to get it. But one thing we did really well was we hit that emotional connection to our audience. I think the best thing that you can do is focus on your why. it's not necessarily what you're doing or how you're doing it that people are going to connect with. It's why you're doing it. People are attracted to passion. And that's the same with products. It doesn't really matter. What I'm doing is really different from what a lot of you guys seem to be doing, which is more product focused. But people also want to know the why. And they want to see that passion and that connection. And getting that across strongly is going to take you so much further than explaining the how or the what. I mean, you have to explain those things too, obviously, but people are going to connect with emotion. So there's some more flood photos. So this is my partner, Allie Geiser, and I rock climbing a few years ago. I thought it was a good teamwork photo. Right? So one of the biggest lessons I learned was get a team. I did my Kickstarter mostly solo, which was terrifying and really hard. And so Allie is one of my partners. I work with her a lot, have for years, but she lives in Seattle, and she also works for Aaron Huey, who's a Nat Geo photographer. And 3 days into our Kickstarter campaign, she randomly had to go to Alaska to shoot Denali National Park for National Geographic, which is awesome for her, not so great for the Kickstarter campaign. So it was just me. And it wasn't until 2.5 weeks in, when I was epicking really hard, that I started to really reach out to my community, other than my boyfriend, to be like, I need support and I need help. And that was a big turning point for me. So going into it, you want to understand your network, like Elena was talking about, how are you going to reach out to people? Who are you going to reach out to? I'm like a compulsive list maker, but I could have been more thorough even in my spreadsheets, and I love spreadsheets. So do that ahead of time. Who are your people? These are some of my people. This is us roller skating, which we do every year on Halloween. It's like 200 people. They are a nutty, community-oriented, thriving crowd, and we love and support each other. So I knew who I was talking to. Boulderites that are between 30 and 40 that like costumes. But figuring out how you're going to get their attention ahead of time and having a really solid plan to do that. It's not that easy. I kind of thought I'd drop the Kickstarter and everyone would be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And they kind of were, but not as much as I thought they would be. It's like I post a picture of a puppy and it gets 100 likes. I post a picture of my Kickstarter thing and it gets 2. I'm like, huh. But you're asking people for money, and you can't forget that you're not just asking them. It's a different type of vote, and it's one that's a lot more serious. So another lesson learned is be loud, and don't be afraid to be annoying. I was a little concerned about being annoying. I didn't want to post too much. I didn't want to get in people's faces. I didn't want to harass people for money. That doesn't work. I mean, I'm not saying post 5 times a day, post once a day. Don't be super annoying. But the thing is, your community is going to forgive you for filling up their feed with annoying Kickstarter posts for a month. They'll get over it. They might be annoyed in the interim, because I've been annoyed with people. All I see is so-and-so's Kickstarter. But they'll get over it. So another thing is organic reach is dead. I didn't realize just how dead organic reach was until I launched my Kickstarter campaign and realized that if I didn't pay to post something, 37 people would see it, and it would tell me that. And I'm like, oh, that's really depressing. Tons of people didn't even know that I'd launched the Kickstarter. And I kind of just assumed that social media would do that work for me. I'm good at social media. People love everything else I post. Kickstarter's algorithms now will literally squash anything that's help, I swear they have the word Kickstarter, that they'll find it, and then they'll make sure no one sees it. Even on your personal page. I have somewhere, I think I have 1,900, 2,000 friends on Facebook. And again, picture the puppy, everyone likes it. Emotional flood thing, no one likes it. But they did when it was the actual flood. I think they just didn't see it. And that's what I heard from so many people. So go into it with an advertising budget. I spent, not a ton, I spent $350, $400 on advertising, and I just picked the right ones that I wanted to push, but that made a big difference. And I would drop $50 on one post because I really wanted people to see that. So that's a huge thing. Another thing that you also talked about is pick your timing. So I launched my Kickstarter campaign in the beginning of June, when everyone is off and running for summer, and also during the World Cup. So the entire world was paying attention to football. Nobody cared about my Kickstarter campaign at all. Everyone was doing this, or more likely in a bar. And that didn't really help. So put some serious thought into the timing of when you're gonna launch it. Another thing is, and this was the biggest lesson I learned, and I've learned this lesson lots in life, is don't give up. As you'll see, we crept our way till the very end. Like, it was embarrassingly slow. The first day we hit like $3 grand, I was like, this is great, and then it didn't really change for a while. 10 days out, we had, I think, like $5 grand, barely. Yep. And I was embarrassed. Like, wow, I put myself out creatively. I have put months of work into this. I do this for a living. You know, I make Kickstarter videos for my clients. And they've all been successful, I will say, like 5 or 6 that I've done. And I was really embarrassed. Even my parents were giving me that like pre-failure pep talk. Yeah, they're like, it's fine, honey. You did a really good job. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I just want to quit. This is so embarrassing. Because it sucks to like fall flat on your face in front of the entire world, whether or not they're paying attention. And then I went to a barbecue, and one of my clients who owns a tech startup in Boulder asked me why I hadn't harassed him yet. And those are the words he used. And I was like, people want me to harass them? Huh, this is amazing. You want me to harass you for money? And he's like, yeah, why haven't you harassed me? My wife wants to know too. I was like, oh. So I started harassing people. And I got really, really aggro about that. I sent 350 personal emails in one day. And that's when you see it start to grow. And then I asked that same CEO if he would email 5 of his CEO friends. And he said, sure, absolutely. And he ended up being like one of the cheerleaders. I think he watched my project closer than I did at the end. Within an hour of him sending those emails, one of Boulder's foremost angel investors gave us $5 grand. Just like that. The other 7 that Will contacted, I think it was somewhere between like $3 grand between all of them, and all of them posted it on their social networks. These are people that have like 100,000 Twitter followers. You know, like, check out this project, it's awesome, it's about community, and that's that big spike you see right there. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, maybe we can do this. But as you'll look, we still were only at like, I think 16, 17,000. It's still, $25,000 is a lot of money. But I kept being persistent, and I kept putting it out there, and we kind of hit that tipping point. And I think the stats are, 80% of projects that get over 20% make it, something like that. Once there's a tipping point in there, and once you hit 50%, you are more likely to make it. But it's not like a guaranteed thing. It's not just gonna like run off by itself and do it. You have to keep working and be really persistent. So speaking of being bummed, this guy came out during my project. The potato salad. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. If not, don't bother Googling it. He's gotten plenty of media attention. It made me laugh, but also made me kind of want to cry when he was, $30,000 a day in. And I remember reading, oh yeah, it was hilarious. I remember reading this article that was like, people or entrepreneurs are crying about their passion projects all over the world. And I was like, that's me. I'm devastated. So that was kind of funny, but not. So another thing is use your contacts. I didn't reach out to some of the bigger players that I know because I didn't want to bother them, I think. I don't know, it's funny how like bold I can be with some things, but my passion project, I was a little timid about, which is absurd and silly. I realize that now. So I reached out to New Era and the guy who founded that. They're a political organization in Denver. They're awesome. I've done a lot of work with them, and I was like, hey, do you know anyone at like Huffington or Upworthy? Because I know they've been on Upworthy. And Upworthy for a project like mine that's where you want to be, but it's really hard. Then a day, we were on Upworthy. He turns out he was really good friends with the editor-in-chief in Upworthy. Who knew? Could have asked him that early. So in the last week, we had a ton of press. We had Upworthy, I was on the radio, I was on CBS, NBC did a thing, I think, a bunch of other local articles. I should have put all those things in place well before I launched the Kickstarter campaign. So that was a huge lesson learned. And I mean, that got us there. It just got this like big spike, and there was this resurgence. And there was also that, oh, this is gonna end at some point. Because people, they lose interest. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna back your project. And you have to like get in front of them more than once a lot of times, and a lot of them won't do it till the very end because like me, they're just like, oh yeah, I'll do that later, you know, and they will. But you can't rely on that. That's like a small amount of people. You have to get in front of so many more than you think. So one thing I've noticed with Kickstarter campaigns, and I haven't backed a ton, maybe like 10, 15, somewhere in there, and I recommend doing that well beforehand, like get to know what it's like to be on that side of things. Like how many posts are annoying, how many posts are the right amount, when do you forget that you backed a campaign because they never update you, which is not a good thing. But anyways, a lot of them make it really complicated. I think simplicity is key. And having, you know, consistent branding through everything. We use brown, color mud, seemed appropriate. But we kept everything as clean as possible in terms of graphics and put a lot of time into that. And I did all of the graphics and everything. And had I been able to hire someone to do that, because I am not a graphic designer, that would have been a worthy investment. So if you have budgets for that, like those aren't things to skimp on. You know, how things look is important. And I'm sure a lot of you know that since you design things. So a big lesson as well is be ready to adapt and change your game. When what you're doing isn't working, don't keep like, you know, beating the dead horse or whatever the saying is. I ended up changing my trailer halfway through because there was like this funny comment in the end that turns out probably wasn't that like appropriate given like the serious nature of what we were talking about, which is disaster relief and taking action. So adapt, and don't be afraid to do that. This is Allie and I again. So another thing is to not take yourself too seriously. This is just my pep talk to all of you. If your Kickstarter fails, it means nothing about you. It takes so much courage to put yourself out there creatively. It's, like I said, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. Like the flood thing was really difficult, but that had nothing to do with me. And that was what was so cool about it. Nothing to do with my life whatsoever. It was about what I could give. Kickstarter campaign was all about me, in a way. It was my idea, it's my film, it's my baby, and it's something that I'm very emotionally connected to. And so I went through some, you know, emotional, intense times during that, and that part of it I didn't anticipate. I think I'm someone who's can be like detached from a project or whatever. I was not detached at all. And I got to a point when I finally let go of that attachment and started just being like, well, I'm gonna do my best and that's all I can do and that's all you can do any day. That's when things really started to take off, because I didn't have that emotional attachment to the project. And the last thing is, it's not over until it's over. Communicate. After, let everyone be a part of your joy, how much fun you're having. I mean, this was one of the more popular Facebook posts I think I've ever posted. The first being that photo I showed you of the mudslingers during the flood. I think that was like 500 or 600 likes. And I was like, whoa, crazy. People were psyched. Everyone wanted to be a part of the party. And now what I'm finding, you know, just a few months out is communication. Like, people want to hear from you. They want to know what's going on. They want to be a part of the process. Like she was saying as well, you know, a lot of these products, they don't come out. Like the Pebble Watch, I think, is 14 months delayed. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that project. If not, you should check it out. They did an amazing job. Like the video is boring, but the product itself is awesome. Though Apple's new watch is kind of gonna blow that out of the water. But they're 14 months out, you know, and they did due diligence with all of their product stuff over in China. But that's kind of part of that is, I think if you're gonna be late, which happens, you just wanna communicate, because no one really cares. Like, as long as you communicate, people will handle whatever it is you put in front of them. It's not dealing with it and not acknowledging where you're at that I think kind of gets you in trouble. And you wanna communicate with your backers. Like, they're your people. They're the ones that are making it happen, and you owe that to them. So, that's it. I hope that was helpful.
Rough guess, how many man hours did you put into that campaign?
A lot.
Woman hours.
Months. Months and months. I have no idea. I wish I could give you a guess. I mean, I was one person, and I did, even before the campaign launched, I probably did 85% of the work.
Okay.
So.
Did you have a video as part of your campaign?
Yeah, we like incorporated part of the film trailer into it. Yeah, you can watch it online if you want to.
So it sounds like you went through Facebook a lot for that social
Email.
email.
I mean, yeah, we use Facebook, but Facebook helped, I think, in the end with the big push. What I found was that when I started reaching out to people personally, and I mean, I had like a template email, but I personalized it for every single person. Like, how's your daughter? You know, like, what's going on with you, whatever. That made the biggest difference when I made those personal, authentic asks of people. And I spent a lot of time going out to like lunch and coffee, and I made a lot of time for that, to sit down and talk with people about my project and why I was so inspired, and you know, what was in it for them? Why would they be inspired by it? And that made a huge difference. We did Twitter, but I think we have like 100 Twitter followers, so it's kind of irrelevant. Yeah, I mean, it was Facebook and personal asks. A Kickstarter? Maybe. Oh, do this project again? Probably. You know, I'm noticing there's a lot of like Kickstarter fatigue, crowdfunding fatigue. It's like every time you look up, someone else is launching a project. And I think it depends on what circles you're in. Like, I am very active in the climbing community, in the filmmaking community, and a lot of artists and people that are up to really big things. So a lot of my friends are always doing really cool projects, and there's always someone who's doing something on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but mostly Kickstarter on Facebook. So there's only so many things you can back, and I think that's something too. Like, I launched mine right after Jeremy Collins, who's a very prolific climber, filmmaker and artist and a good friend, had just wrapped his up. You know, and a lot of people had backed that, like tons. I think they raised like 60 grand or something like that. So we offered the film at every level, which is really different. We're planning on releasing the film for free online. I don't know if I told you guys about the film, but it's about taking action. So what inspires someone to take action? It's not about the flood and what we did so much as how do you get more involved in your community? Like, what gets in the way, that sort of stuff. I just totally blanked on what you asked me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the perks.
Oh, the perks, right. So we offered the film at every level. But $25 is where you got the DVD. And that's a really sweet spot. It's like $25 to $35. People loved that. We had like a $90 backers only party. We got like a t-shirt. People like t-shirts. I didn't think that many people would like t-shirts. People love t-shirts. Those were like $50. But you also got the DVD and a download of the, we have a composer, a local musician who's doing the score for the film, so you got that. People like that one a lot too. Perks are hard for something like a film, because you don't have a product necessarily. You get, you know, it's gonna be a short documentary. It's gonna be like 30 minutes. Like at the $5,000 level, in retrospect, maybe this was a little too flippant, but we, you know, Allie Geiser's a poet. She's going to write a poem and recite it to our backer at the top of the first Flatiron, and then we're taking him out to dinner in a private screening. And he gets like a huge print of mine of one of the photos that I took during the flood, but like $5 grand. I mean.
How many did you have?
At that level, just one.
Okay.
Yeah, but we had another backer at $1,000, and then I think 8 or 9 at 500, which was pretty cool. And then the rest were mostly $90 and under. Like, that's where the majority of our funding came from. If you took the $5 grand away, which kind of skews the balance. Cool.
All right, let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you.
And great, best of luck.